Dragon Ball GT was already slandered in casual Dragon Ball conversation, but when Dragon Ball Super finally released way back in 2015, yes, you heard that right, 2015, it's been almost a decade now since Super first aired. Time is a very, very scary thing. Dragon Ball GT really got thrown under the bus because with the existence of Super, it all but confirmed no one has any reason to care about this series anymore, including Toriyama. And no longer being considered canon means you don't simply need to pretend it doesn't exist, it just doesn't for all intents and purposes. Hence Toriyama going on to create all these branching narratives in Super that directly contradict things that happen in GT. I remember at first when people were like, nah man, just because there's Super content and it comes before GT doesn't mean that GT's not canon. Maybe all this stuff just happened prior, and and then the GT stuff still canon, and then gods started being introduced in other universes, and it's like, all right guys, come on, give it up, it's okay. I think for the most part, most people are fine with the fact that GT isn't canon anyway. Not too many sit on the GT is good bus. You got your casual outliers who do really just enjoy the series for what it is. You got your people like me who think the show has enough flashes of greatness coupled with some childhood nostalgia to let it be, and you have your fans who just love the designs of some of the characters so much that it's always going to have a place in their heart, which I feel like all three of those things are rather respectable. That all being said, from this small sample serving of fans, not too many go to bat for this series very often, until today. Well, clarifying, I'm not going to bat for the entire series, just one specific saga out of the 4 sagas that make up Dragon Ball GT. That saga being the Baby Saga, which is in my opinion head and shoulders the best stint of Dragon Ball GT's relatively short 64 episode run. It has an interesting and reasonably motivated main antagonist in Baby, interesting and unique matchups in terms of fighting, a pretty breathtaking and emotional moment for the time being, and most importantly probably from this is we get the Super Saiyan 4 transformation, which is head and shoulders one of the best transformations in the entire series. It also has some pretty amazing fight choreography as a saga, but hot take, Dragon Ball GT has the second best fight choreography right behind Dragon Ball Z. I said what I said, man. I said what I said. I ain't taking it back. Moving on. Now, I know there are plenty of people who have never even touched Dragon Ball GT, so as I progressively gush through this saga arc, whatever you want to call it, I will be kind of summarizing and keeping up with the timeline and what was happening when, just to sort of organize the video so I'm not bouncing all over the place. So, with the setup being completely out of the way, because one of my New Year's resolutions is to make shorter intros, let's talk about the time Dragon Ball GT was actually really good. What? Hold on, fam. This not the Dragon Ball GT opening. Come on, bro. Play that shit. You know what I'm saying? We here for that real shit. You know what I'm saying? Get the real shit going.
Take the grand tour, GT. Step into the grand tour, step into the grand tour, Dragon Ball GT. Step into the grand tour, Dragon Ball GT. Step into the grand tour, a brand new adventure begins. Another challenge for Goku and his friends. Now he's a Saiyan strong. Feel makes him a child again. The Dragon Balls are turning burning to end. World and everything within. The ultimate battle between good and evil. Who's gonna win when the sand clock dictates the consequence? Will I will have the strength to be our last line of defense? Step into the grand tour, Dragon Ball GT.
Alright, so the start of this saga actually transitions pretty smooth from the end of the last saga. If you don't know anything about anything when it comes to GT, In short, the Pilaf gang have made a wish to turn Goku into a child. And of course, this is a bad thing, so Goku, along with Pan and Trunks, go on a grand tour, haha, get it, GT, to find the Dragon Balls and obviously turn Goku back into an adult. This pretty much embodies like the first quarter of Dragon Ball GT, just them going on wacky little goofy adventures and, well, looking for the Dragon Balls. Fun fact, in America, the first arc was entirely skipped and did not get dubbed until later on because American producers and execs found the first arc to be way too boring and not have enough action. Which I won't speak on whether that's true or false, but the first part of Dragon Ball GT definitely leans way more into the adventure aspect and goofing off between these group of characters and not so much fighting. So, I mean, I guess I understand where they were coming from, but still a dumb decision. So on this journey looking for the Dragon Balls, one of the locations that our gang ends up at is a super creepy, well, laboratory where there's an evil scientist working on experiments, yada yada yada, you know, the mad scientist trope. And as Pan, Goku, and Trunks are defeating him and ending it off, getting ready to bounce out and collect the last Dragon Ball on their journey, he, in a last-ditch effort, releases a cybernetic parasite Bing, and that Bing is Baby. Here comes the first thing I really think is cool about this. Baby has a vendetta against the Saiyan race because the original planet Vegeta actually was not just a planet that the Saiyans were born on. It was actually inhabited by a race of beings called the Tuffles. The Saiyan race just happened to land on this planet and claim it as their own, and then, well, King Vegeta would then call it Planet Vegeta, and so forth and so on with the history of Saiyans. These days in Super, the mythos of Saiyans and just kind of broadening the greater universe is more so common with the introduction of Universe 6, Universe 7, and the Tournament of Power. But back in the day, the biggest thing in terms of major story beats that was tied to Dragon Ball was Frieza. And I mean, to be fair, Frieza's vendetta against the Saiyans is kind of like unfair because, well, he quite literally enslaved and massacred their race. The Tuffles, on the other hand, were completely innocent and just kind of, well, got their shit robbed. So right there, in my opinion, Baby has easily one of the more grounded motivations in all of Dragon Ball when we're talking about the antagonist. Obviously, revenge and having a vendetta against someone isn't the craziest thing in the world, nor is popping out years later to enact this revenge. That's not something new in terms of anime or even storytelling, really. But in terms of just Dragon Ball, easily one of the better motivations. I mean, we're talking about a series that originally had Broly have a beef with Goku purely based off the fact that he messed with his sleep when they were kids. So I mean, that's a joke, by the way. I know it's a movie. I know it's filler. I know they just had to come up with something to make like a 40-minute special of like cool effects and fights. I know, okay? I know. I get it. It's a joke. And to be honest, I kind of wish that's something that would be explored more in terms of Dragon Ball. Literally, if they just redid this entire arc in a future rendition of Super, just like one of the races that the Saiyans thought they wiped out, they didn't actually wipe out, and they come to Earth with a vendetta against all Saiyans, I think that'd be dope. I think that'd be cool. I think it's cool here, and I think it would be even more cool if they were to do it down the line. Because again, you have Frieza and you have Cell and you have people who have vendetta against just like the Z fighters in general, not just Saiyans, but a lot of the time they were bad people to begin with, and so their vendetta isn't like the most justified. It's just like, well, they stopped you from doing a bad thing that you wanted to do, usually that bad thing meaning like take their life. Whereas Baby and the Tuffles, it's not like the most reasonable thing, considering the fact that the only Saiyan who was probably even somewhat connected to the destruction and downfall of your planet is Vegeta, and they don't even make it clear whether Vegeta was born or not, but fine, his father led that charge, so that's okay and reasonable. But Goku, Gohan, Goten, Pan, Bulla, none of them had anything to do with that, and so you're kind of just like being a racist, but it's fine. I get it. It's a grounded approach and it's kind of realistic. Now, as I said, Baby is a parasitic being, meaning he inhabits the life forms of others, takes control of them, and uses them for his own bidding, essentially as just his little evil puppets. Not once in this entire arc does Baby ever get strong enough to stand on his own. The Tuffles were not a warrior race. So the entire run of this saga up until the very end and the climax, he is controlling the body of someone else. Most of the time, it's Vegeta. When we initially discover him, the first person he ever takes control of happens to be Trunks, but he is in such a weakened state, having just been woken up, that he can't keep full control over Trunks. Even without keeping control over Trunks though, Baby has an amazing ability that, well, I'll just let him say it.
Ah, so I see you do remember me. You never knew this, but in the short time I controlled your body, I managed to lay my egg inside of it.
What did he say?
Yeah, so because Baby can lay eggs inside of you, even if he enters your body once, it does not matter how he leaves. If you're forcing him out or if he just happens to leave all his own, he still has control over you. Something akin to like a sleeper agent kill switch. Now, something that I always, even as a kid, thought was really weird and sort of like a major plot hole in this arc is the fact that if Baby was able to cause all this havoc just by himself, why was it so easy for Saiyans to overtake the Tuffle planet to begin with? It wasn't until a few months ago when I rewatched this saga for like, I really truthfully want to say like the 8th or 9th time, that I finally picked up on a small detail that made everything make complete sense. So the ability to basically take over someone's body as a host and make them your slave is not an ability inherent to the Tuffles. It's an ability inherent to Baby, who is a genetically modified Tuffle. And I wasn't alone in being kind of confused about this. I've seen quite a few reviews and retrospectives and critiques of Dragon Ball GT, and a couple of them have also brung up this point. And to be honest, I don't think it's like the weirdest thing in the world that it happens, because it's kind of like a quick glanced over detail in Baby's backstory, and if you miss it, then you just miss it. But Baby's always referring to himself as a Tuffle in the Tuffle race, so it could be easily misconstrued that this is something that all Tuffles can do, when in fact it is not. And I'm not saying that the writing of the show was bad or they didn't do a great job explaining it. I think it's just one of those weird miscommunications between the audience and the writers. I also believe that the writers may have known that it'd be a little confusing, and they tried their best to make this as clear as possible, even with the differences in how each Tuffle looks compared to Baby. Tuffles look more like just regular humans for the most part, whereas Baby is like this weird gray blob thing. So effort was put in to make that discrepancy, despite what some people think, including me up until about a few months ago. It's not a plot hole. So after Goku, Trunks, and Pan do what they think is defeating Baby, he flees and manages to get to Earth. There he goes on a bit of a rampage looking for the Saiyans that exist on Earth, those Saiyans obviously being Goten, Gohan, and Vegeta. Side note, it is really cool to see an older version of Goten. I really enjoy the older version of Goten. He's like a calm, cool, relaxed, like, I'm just saying, hey, my nigga Goten get bitches now, bro. Come on, man, talk to him. And this is just another underrated quality of GT in my personal opinion, seeing the evolution and growth of so many of the young characters that we see either born or we see that are kind of grow up a little bit in Z, but they're still kids by the end of Z. And in GT, they're either teenagers or young adults. We have Pan, who's handled in a really cool way, in my opinion, being sort of this reverse mirror image of Gohan in a way, whereas Gohan at her age was really passive and really reserved in his own thoughts, But if you put him in the right circumstances and in the right conditions, he had a monster inside of him that would take your head off. Whereas Pan is kind of reverse of that, because she's kind of always on go. She always wants to prove that she can stand next to the likes of everyone, her friends, her family, can defend people. But if you put her in an intense enough situation, she just breaks down and she just folds, and it's something that you have to see her bounce back and forth with a lot in the series. We see Goten, who I already have pointed out is no longer the knucklehead kid that we saw in Z. He's a lot more confident, a lot more sure of himself. But one thing I really want to point out is Gohan, who, just like in Super, is still a scholar, but the decision to just pull him completely out of training or fighting shape isn't made in GT. Granted, he doesn't stand next to the likes of Vegeta or Goku in the end, but he still holds his own, and I will present that point a little bit more as I go forward through the timeline of this baby saga. So baby finally stumbles across his first Saiyan, that Saiyan being Goten. Goten is on a date during this confrontation with baby, and it pretty much goes exactly how you would imagine Goten having no prior knowledge of baby or any of his abilities, tricks, or techniques. Goten is pushed sorta to his limit trying to get rid of baby, and as soon as baby gets the opportunity to take over Goten's body, that's exactly what he does. A condition that isn't really all that set in stone, but baby brings it up enough that I feel like I should bring it up enough, is he seems to only be able to enter someone's body if two conditions are met. One, he has to be able to come into contact with blood, so that usually means he's going to enter their body through the form of a cut. And two, he seems to like entering people's body during the height of their power, when they're powering up or when they're at their strongest. I'm not 100% on why that exact condition needs to be met. I mean, the blood thing makes kind of sense because he's literally trying to enter their body and he's doing it through their bloodstream. They do a pretty convincing job with like the scientific wumbo jumbo of that when he takes over Vegeta finally, spoiler alert. But I don't really get the whole power thing. That being said, it brings me to another side tangent and another hot take. Man, this one's gonna be fuming. As a Dragon Ball music composer, I enjoy Mark Menza over Bruce Faulkner and the original Japanese score. I said what I said, man. I said what I said. Now, do I dislike the Japanese score? No. Do I dislike Bruce Faulkner's score? Of course not. Of course not. But whenever Mark Menza enters the picture, it just hits different for me, man. He goes about it in like a much more different way. Bruce Faulkner in the original Japanese score used lots of horns and things like that. And their tone setting comes across more heroic, right? And more like epic. Mark Menza's score, when he's integrated and pushed into the Dragon Ball picture, comes across a little bit more edgy, a little bit more anti-hero, and I just enjoy it a little bit more. Here's an example of Mark Menza's score in full effect when Goten decides to transform into a Super Saiyan.
Wow, what's happening to him? He looks like a beautiful angel. I think I'm in love.
Alright, so let's just get something out the way. Music is subjective, blah 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 blah. There's no such thing as objectively good music or objectively bad music. There's just music that some people like a lot more holistically in terms of popularity, and music that's less popular. I'm not going to go on a rant here and try to convince you that Mark Menza's score is more on par for the Dragon Ball series or anything. No, that's dumb. We're not doing that. If anything, I think a big charm of Mark Menza's score is that it's so rare in that you don't hear it too often. You hear it in Dragon Ball GT in the English dub, and even then there are some weird English dubs that have the English voice acting, but it has the Japanese OSTs, which is really weird. And so maybe you'll hear it in Dragon Ball GT, and it's occasionally scattered throughout some of the specials of Dragon Ball, the early specials, which I will talk about at some point someday because some juicy stuff is in there. But continuing on with the Baby Saga, Goten finishes his confrontation with Baby only to have his body taken over because obviously he does not know the ins and outs of this being yet. While in control of Goten, Baby goes on the hunt for the rest of the Saiyans that roam Earth. He runs into none other than Gohan. Now, if you're a follower of this channel, you already know how much of a snob I am for Gohan. I just have to put it out there up front, and I'm not ashamed of it. The reason I put that preface in there is to basically say I enjoyed this little scrap between Gohan and Goten probably a little bit more than I should have. But what can I say, man? In the year 2023, any small amount of decency given to this character I appreciate. So there's a small scrap between Gohan and Goten. Baby, of course, picks up while controlling Goten that him and Gohan have a connection, being brothers, meaning Gohan is in a lose-lose moment here. He either wins and defeats Baby but kills his own brother, or he loses and, well, he loses. Gohan, being the pacifist at heart that he is, succumbs to Baby and also gets infected. A Baby controlled Gohan eventually hunts down Vegeta. Something I really enjoy seeing with Vegeta in GT is his interactions with Bulla. He's like a very prototypical tropish like dad who was a complete madman in his 20s and early 30s, but now that he has a teenage daughter, and when it comes to interacting with her, he has absolutely no spine whatsoever, and it is very comedic, and I enjoy it. So when Baby finally tracks down Vegeta, they have a nice confrontation where Baby's like, haha, you don't remember me? And then Vegeta's like, oh yeah, I do remember you. And then Baby explains the entire history of the Tuffles, even though out of all the Saiyans, it makes the least amount of sense to explain the backstory and his motivations to Vegeta, because Vegeta is like the one Saiyan who would understand and actually not need any insight on why Baby would be mad as a Tuffle, but he does it, and so that's the thing. After he explains it and we get clear insight into Baby's motivations, remember the Saiyans took over his planet to create Planet Vegeta, yada yada yada. He then sees Vegeta is bracing for combat because, you know, Vegeta's like, are you done talking? Can we fight now? And then Baby's like, haha, you never kill the son of your good friend Goku, would you? And then Vegeta's like, oh nigga, you don't know me. Fuck you. Fuck the Tuffles, fuck Goku, and fuck Gohan. I don't give a shit. and just a moment of Baby's like face like slowly turning to realize like, oh, this nigga's serious. Oh, okay. And it's just a nice, really chilling, classic Vegeta moment of him just talking hella shit, not caring about any consequences, gassing you up, thinking he's about to fuck somebody up, and then, in very Vegeta fashion, Goten pulls up because he's still being controlled by Baby, and Gohan and Goten they jump Vegeta, and all that shit he just talked just ends up being smoke and mirrors. But hey, it's Vegeta, bro. We know what we getting, okay? Like, this isn't surprising. It's just more subtle disappointment. Moving on. After taking control of Vegeta's body with the infection, Baby then decides that Vegeta would be the best suited host for his Tuffle revival. He then makes every human on Earth his Tuffle slave, and finally Pan, Trunks, and Gohan to make their triumphant return. They come back only to see that all of their friends and family are under the control of Baby and think of themselves as now Tuffles. There's a great moment between Goten and Gohan versus Goku, but it's not that great because it looks a little silly seeing Goten and Gohan now both being adults fighting a child version of their dad. And this is just one of the many times I feel like the cool, edgy aspect of GT is completely robbed by Goku being a literal child, because there's this super intense moment where Goku kind of like swats away one of Gohan's attacks without even looking at it, and he's like, you're clearly not my son, because I taught my son not to do little weak pussy ass attacks from behind. Obviously he doesn't say it like that, but you get what I'm saying. And it just comes across really goofy seeing what is on the surface this child lecture these two grown men about how to fight. It's just weird. But after fending off Goten and Gohan for a while, a baby controlled Vegeta finally shows up to have a nice confrontation with Goku, and we can get another variation for the 4th time of Goku and Vegeta fighting. There's a small back and forth, but inevitably Baby overcomes Goku. Goku, being a child, for some reason his body cannot maintain the energy levels needed of Super Saiyan 3. You know, Super Saiyan 3, inefficient transformation in terms of managing power, something blah blah blah. I don't know, they explain this in Dragon Ball at some point in time. Moving on. So he gets wiped out and what appears to be killed in the eyes and aspect of everyone else, but we see that Kibito Kai saves Goku at the very last minute, and then there are basically just 2 episodes of filler. Incoming, someone being like,
none of GT is canon, so it's basically all filler.
We get it, man. You don't like GT. Shut up. I call it filler because basically in the process of trying to save Goku from a devastating attack from Baby, he drops Goku along the way to bring him back to the land of the Kais, and drops him in some dimension where they're playing a game to determine if you go to heaven or hell. I don't know, man. It's silly. It's nonsense. Back on Earth, Baby uses the Dragon Balls that Goku, Pan, and Trunks just gathered to wish the planet of Tuffles back. He then comes up with this elaborate scheme to take all the humans from Earth and move them to the Tuffle planet. That's important because that answers the question, why the hell does Goku stay a kid for this entire series if they get the Dragon Balls in the 2nd arc? Well, they don't. As I'm sure we all know by now, they do come up with a sort of elaborate way to get Goku back into being an adult, but we will touch on that when we get there. So after finally escaping the game, that there's a lot of plot twists and turns that come to playing that game in that like episode and a half worth of content, but I'll be honest, it's dumb, so we're not going to cover it. What you need to know for Goku right now is that he does eventually get to the land of the Kais, and because Baby's literally on the verge of taking out all of humanity, that Goku is trying to come up with a short and quick way to get more powerful, and that leads to the Kai saying, let's regrow your tail, and they proceed to get a giant pair of pliers and pull Goku's tail out of his ass for like 2 episodes. Yeah, anime. Moving on. So of the people who have not been put under control yet by Baby, we have Goku, Pan, Hercule, Majin Buu, and Oob. Pan, Hercule, and Majin Buu obviously are no match for Baby, but Oob does step to the scene, and I remember being so excited for this when I was a kid, because Oob was the first black character in Dragon Ball that didn't look like a Jim Crow cartoon. He gives 2 strong attempts at beating Baby himself. One, when he comes in a Deus Ex Machina way to save Pan from her death, and eventually gets swatted down by Baby because he's not powerful enough. And then in a second attempt, when he fuses with Majin Buu, and there's like supposed to be this super sentimental moment because Majin Buu is about to go away forever, presumably to increase the power of Oob, but that also fails, and it literally ends in him getting turned into chocolate and eaten himself. So that's disappointing. But Goku finally makes it to the fight, and our real climactic battle is about to begin on the newly wished back planet of the Tuffles. I kinda hate this fight. Now, is it objectively bad? No, absolutely not. But I dislike it because I have this weird pet peeve when it comes to any media whatsoever, where I don't really like seeing normal sized things have conflict with giant sized things. Goku has his little scrap with Baby Vegeta, and where he's in his kid form and he's fighting Baby Vegeta, and they're not really going back and forth because for whatever reason, it's shocking to everyone that despite Goku just pulling out his tail, he has gotten no more powerful, and baby Vegeta is still a step ahead of him. And then Goku transforms into a great ape, and that's cool. I really like the actual transformation sequence, besides this like weird bit where his body's throbbing. That made me uncomfortable as a kid, and as an adult, yeah, still kind of uncomfortable. Goku undergoes a transformation into a great ape. I hate it. I do not like seeing conflict between characters that are greatly disproportionate in size. I don't know what it is. I just feel like it greatly limits you in terms of like your fight and your action choreography and your shots when you have something super huge, and in comparison it makes the thing that's in conflict with it be really small. And I am very much so aware that this is just like a super strong opinion. It is not some objective thing that means you can't have big stuff in your stories. That obviously that's not true, but for me personally, I don't really like it, which is kind of ironic considering the fact that I do love me a good kaiju film. But besides the point, Goku ragdolls baby in his great ape form for a little bit, and he finally reels in and controls himself and gains consciousness again after going great ape, which then leads us to one of the best transformations in all of Dragon Ball, the Super Saiyan 4 transformation. From the music that's playing, from the actual design of Super Saiyan 4, even down to the really small and minute things like the stance that he takes when he's first revealed as Super Saiyan 4. I love all of this for Goku. It's amazing. Canon or not canon, Super Saiyan 4 is cool, and you can't tell me otherwise. In fact, it's so cool that I would be willing to redeem the nonsense that went on before he actually became a Super Saiyan 4, where there was like just a weird combination of fighting and yelling and storytelling between him as a great ape and baby Vegeta, and him just ragdolling and terrorizing the city. But then a baby enslaved Bulma shoots baby Vegeta with, quote, blood waves, and these blood waves then turn baby into a great ape. And the excitement I felt while Goku was ragdolling baby in Super Saiyan 4, and he was just doing a bunch of creative things between two human-sized characters, completely goes out the window, because now he has to fight a great ape.
Is this nigga serious or what?
Like, alright, I'm dragging it, right? It's not the worst thing in the world, but look at this. This is probably the most impressive thing that goes on while they're fighting. This like little hip toss that Goku does, and it's just lame, man. He also kicks baby in the back of the head. It's just boring, man. I hate it. So Goku is no match. While in his ape form, baby greatly outpowers even a Super Saiyan 4 Goku. It takes Goten, Gohan, and Trunks coming in to help power up Goku after they have been saved from the baby infection by Kibito Kai. After getting the power increase from these three with a nice pan inclusion, which is really cool. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just enjoy the whole a bunch of Saiyans giving one Saiyan in particular to put him or her over the top. It's really cool. I enjoyed it here. I enjoyed it in Battle of Gods. I enjoyed it in the Battle of Gods arc in Dragon Ball Super. I even enjoyed it a little bit earlier in this arc when baby does it. I don't know, it's just cool. So a repowered, reinvigorated Super Saiyan 4 Goku finds himself to be too much for baby, and he takes control, zapping off his tail, reducing him from that great ape form, which then for whatever reason separates baby and Vegeta. I say for whatever reason, I just don't know like the in-story narrative reason that happened, but obviously for the sake of story structure, it would be kind of sad to see Goku just obliterate Vegeta's body. But regardless, with them separated, baby is now too weak, because remember, the Tuffles are not a warrior race. The only reason baby was ever this powerful is because he was in control of someone else's body. He tries to make a great escape on a ship and then literally gets sniped out the air by a Kamehameha wave from Goku, and that is the end of that. And that is the conclusion to the... Wait, there's actually There's actually one more episode. One sec. So instead of doing the obligatory, as soon as the main villain dies, everything is just completely fixed, Dragon Ball takes a different route. So obviously the gang of Z fighters in combination with Kibito Kai have to figure out a way not to have the human race be enslaved by this, well, Tuffle parasite for the rest of their lives, and they come up with this thing that's basically holy water, and it's the same thing that helped Trunks, Goten, and Gohan originally. They spread it to all the humans that have been infected by the Tuffles, and everything seems fine and dandy until you realize that the earth is exploding. Something I did not touch on in the beginning when I was explaining the basic premise of GT is that with the Black Star Dragon Balls, which is the set of Dragon Balls that were used to originally wish Goku to a kid to begin with them being used for some reason, if these Dragon Balls aren't gathered back within a year to Earth, the Earth blows up. And yeah, that's a thing. And apparently with Baby instantly using the Dragon Balls the moment they got them back, that did not reset the timer, and so him using the Dragon Balls to wish for a new planet of the Tuffles effectively serves as them never having retrieved the Dragon Balls anyway. And since it took them a year to originally retrieve the Dragon Balls, the Earth is gonna explode because there's only 2 weeks left, and it would take them probably more than 2 weeks to get one Dragon Ball. So in a bit of quick thinking, their plan is to essentially let Earth blow up by taking everyone to the planet of the Tuffles. Once it blows up, just make a wish with a different set of Dragon Balls to bring Earth back. And so then the last episode of this arc is essentially this race against time, if they're trying to gather everyone up and get them all to the planet of the Tuffles and make sure all the humans are there. And then this really, really interesting and kind of random sad moment happens, even more interesting and even more weird than Boo essentially being written off the show because he's going to fuse with Oob, right? Piccolo dies. Now at this point in the series, Piccolo is virtually useless in terms of fighting, and everyone's all grown up, so he can't really serve as like that mentor role for like Gohan or Trunks or Goten anymore. He pretty much has absolutely no use whatsoever. And I remember as a kid being really, really sad about this, despite Piccolo hadn't really achieving or doing anything of any real significance in years at this point. Still, as a kid, I cried. I was really, really sad that Piccolo died, and I think it more so has to do with Gohan's reaction to Piccolo dying. It just kind of like set me off, because at one point, as a little black boy, as many other little black boys probably felt while watching Dragon Ball, Piccolo was my favorite character until I got a better understanding of writing and realized that he was kind of just around because he's around. But still, now reflecting on this as an adult, it's probably just like a cheap pull at tears, which I guess it accomplished. As a kid, it made me really sad, so maybe it achieves its objective. But essentially what happens to Piccolo is Goku is not powerful enough in his kid state to use instant transmission. He has to be in a Super Saiyan 4 state because his kid body can't pull off the technique because reasons, okay? And so he's like instant transmissioning groups of people like in little small individual bundles back and forth between Planet of the Tuffles, and then coming back to Earth, get more humans, take those humans to Planet of the Tuffles. And there's a little boy and his dog that are stragglers on Earth. And Piccolo stumbles across this little boy, into which he calls up Goku and says, "Hey, I need you to get this kid out of here." And oh no, Goku has used all of his power and no longer has the strength to get another trip back to Earth. And I'm sure you can see where this is headed. Piccolo gives Goku all his energy that he can, which gives him just enough to get the puppy, the kid, and Goku to Earth, but unfortunately not Piccolo. And Piccolo dies in the explosion with Earth. Also a real like sentimental passing moment between him and Gohan, and where he's like, yeah, this is best because if this happens, that means that the Black Star Dragon Balls would turn to stone, and clearly those Dragon Balls are much too powerful and too dangerous, and they're the reason we're even in this situation, blah blah blah. And I don't even know why he's connected to the Dragon Balls at this point. I guess it's because he fused with the original Guardian of Earth who was the making. I don't remember, that was a long time ago, but regardless, this is where we are. So Piccolo's death is also where this iconic Gohan moment comes from.
Don't leave us, Piccolo!
And after his death and they get Earth back, that's actually the end of the baby arc. And in my opinion, it feels much more concluding than the actual last arc that proceeds after it for GT. And maybe that's just my bias because the baby arc is the only one that I really love from GT. But regardless, that doesn't really matter. That concludes the baby arc. And truth be told, I know I had a lot of criticisms for it throughout, but I had to be as objective to my own feelings as possible. I did not get clouded by nostalgia, and even all the critiques I made and all the likes that I made, all in all, I still enjoyed the baby arc all these years later. I still think it's kind of great. I think as an antagonist, Baby doesn't get the love that he may deserve, but that's only because Dragon Ball has run so long that so many of the great qualities he holds as an antagonist exist in other antagonists and a little bit better. Like, we have him going through forms and different levels of power, and that's something that Cell did and Majin Buu did, and something that Frieza did. We have his vendetta against Saiyans, which feels a little bit more reasonable than Frieza's, but still that's an antagonist that already had that trait. We have him being this enhanced cybernetic being, well, that's Cell. We have him slowly and methodically taking control of people and taking them out of the story for the time being, and that's something that Majin Buu did, right? So he's just like this mixture of all the other antagonists, right? And standing on his own, he seems really nice, but obviously the way that Dragon Ball and just Shonen in general is set up, it's kind of gearing you and it's muscle memory to compare him to past foes, so it's really hard to make that separation and that distinction. That being said though, I still think he's good. I still think he's quality. The main thing I love about him the most is that motivation of, hey, the Saiyans wiped out my stuff, so I'm gonna wipe out their stuff and I'm gonna get revenge for my people. And the fact that, yeah, he was still doing a bad thing and he still roped in a bunch of people that in the end didn't really have any attachment to the devastating things that happened to his people. But when something devastating happens to you or to people you care about, you tend to see red, right? So yeah, Baby wasn't the greatest in terms of morality, and the story definitely does not raise any of those questions. They want you to think, nah, this guy's evil, forget his motivations. I still appreciate that in Dragon Ball, and this late into Dragon Ball, that he was a villain that was more so grounded in his emotions. He wasn't just like some brainless being hell-bent on destroying everything, even though by the end he kind of was that when he was the Great Ape, but that just goes on a long list of reasons why I didn't enjoy that. But unfortunately, that sucks that it ended that way. Regardless though, it's still lit. One more little slight nod that I really enjoyed from GT is the character growth sticks, right? I understand that in Super, the dynamic that we're going for is quite literally extending Dragon Ball, right? We're not winding down. It doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. So you kind of had to reset some of the progress that some of the characters made in Z for the betterment and quality of Super. But there's this moment that really stands out. In the last episode, after Goku has got Baby separated from Vegeta, and Vegeta's coming up with a plan to save everyone on Earth, Goku talks about Super Saiyan 4, and it doesn't irk Vegeta that he's not a Super Saiyan 4. It doesn't bother him. He doesn't feel any of this passive resentment towards Goku and the fact that he's a Super Saiyan 4 and Vegeta's not a Super Saiyan 4. He kind of just grins and he's like, oh yeah, rub it in, Kakarot, rub it in, you got there, you're the best. And it goes in line with that speech he made when he was just admiring Goku fight Kid Buu, and he said, you're the best, Kakarot, there's no one better than you, I accept that, lead the ship, keep evolving, I can't keep up with you, right? I'm not saying that I want that for Vegeta, but it was cool seeing him be at peace with not being the best, and it just kind of lined up perfectly with where his headspace was at the end of Z. It just kind of went together really nicely, and I appreciated that. This video is already too long, so let's just end it here by saying that was the time that GT was kind of great. And that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, go ahead and subscribe and like and do all that fun mumbo jumbo. I don't really have anything to say here because I need to finish this video. So I am leaving.